There are many different barrel types. Did you ever
Yeah.
consider calling your company Butt?
Or butt ton, for the record. Welcome once again to Chill Filtered, the podcast where we drink whiskey so you don't have to. But you probably should. You probably are. Let's not kid ourselves. Hey, that's why we like you. We are very excited for this fun episode. We do have someone we're interviewing this one. Every now and then we like to bring in someone. And this someone is with a company called Hogshead. And Hogshead is an online kind of like marketplace in a way for, and we'll get into that. We'll let him explain it better than I can, for selling whiskey barrels and being able to get on top of that kind of stuff. We have a lot of questions we're prepared to ask him, but his name is Beau. And Beau, welcome. I assume I think I said read is Beau Beckman, right?
You got it.
There it is. So welcome, Beau. Yeah, tell us some of your resume and how you got into Hogshead and what Hogshead is in the meantime.
Yeah, so my resume, I just got very lucky to get in the whiskey industry. I was selling cars in between semesters of college or just over the summer. And then after college, that turned into, this was 2008-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, car dealerships didn't want to put their inventory online. And if it was online, they didn't want to share their pricing because they wanted to come to the dealership and then they would negotiate there. And I would just be constantly, on one end, we were building websites to generate leads for these dealerships and drive traffic to the dealerships. But I was trying to explain, people are shopping differently now. They're buying online. They're not coming to the dealership. You need to put your inventory online and you need to put a fair price online. That's just if you want to sell cars. And so a lot of what I was doing, though, was working with, we had these programmers in India that were helping us build a CRM for the dealership so they didn't have to pay for like a sales force or whatnot. And so I'd just kind of be interfacing between various levels at the dealership, from sales team to, owner to manager, whatnot, and then go back to the developers in India and, help program things. And then about that time, I got a call from my grandmother, which this will need explaining, I'm sure. And she was working on a documentary with the University of Kentucky and Buffalo Trace called the Oral History Project. And
I love that.
They were, basically getting a lot of the tribal knowledge from the distillery, on film and recorded. So we're interviewing, Elmer and Freddie Johnson and Freddie's dad and Mark Brown and Harlan. And so my grandmother was working on that and working with the marketing department there to build that. And at that time, Buffalo Trace reacquired the Old Taylor brand.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it was with Beam or Fortune Brands at the time, but whatever it was, there was some lawsuit, and when it all played out, I think Mark Brown was strategic in getting that brand back at that distillery, knowing what
was originally there.
And I don't want to speak for the other team, but I don't necessarily think they knew that. I mean, it was 2008. I don't know, he was way ahead of a lot of people at this time. And so it was very convenient that they needed somebody to run a single barrel program about this time. And one of the problems with their barrel program is they just didn't have a system to manage it of sorts. And so my grandmother called and said, "You should apply." And so I didn't know anything about 3-tier. I didn't really know what it meant to buy a barrel of bourbon. Like, I was just picturing someone, like a lot of people do when they learn, like, what, I should drive off with a full barrel of bourbon
in the back of the truck,
sloshing in the back of the truck, or the back of the truck. Yeah.
And so, that helped me kind of get in touch with the marketing team, and then went through the whole. There's like a Sazerac is historically slow, was back in this time. There's like a long, interview process. But yeah, so then I got a job there in 2011, and my boss said we need to sell more barrels and make more raving fans. And so it was basically
Nice.
customer service is your number one priority,
Mhm.
and go figure it out. So
Nice.
That's cool though.
Now, before we get into what you were doing there and how you shaped up the single barrel program there, first off, what did you major in college?
marketing, but it was
Marketing.
not a thoughtful decision on my part. I've actually somehow I majored in it, and then I was in the marketing department at Buffalo Trace. I do not like marketing. I've never liked marketing. It is just something about it. Like, people like the band that is not on the radio. Once you're on the radio.
Mhm.
But you didn't like that, but do you feel like your background in marketing has helped you a lot in all the stuff you've been working on?
Honestly, not one bit.
Nice.
Perfect.
Got to do it.
I just do not like. To me, all growing up, everyone was like, "You're going to be a sales. You're going to, sales." And then my grandfather, who's actually he's E.H. Taylor Hay, Jr. He was just like way ahead of his time and everything, and made and lost several fortunes, and just like a serial entrepreneur and salesman. And so, like, growing up, everyone was like, "You're going to be sales." And then he would always give me these sales things and
Nice.
little radio bites that would play in my head.
Right. And so that was the tie-in there. That was why your grandma was working on the documentary then, was the family tie-in with E.H. Taylor?
Yeah, well, so it's actually gets crazier than that. Grandma is actually my step grandma. She is quite a bit younger than grandpa, but they got married the year I was born. So I know it's not often that grandmas are making documentaries. That was like, but yeah, so she's, and she's tied in with a lot of distilleries, and she does a lot of like curation and storytelling. And that's kind of like her big MO, and does all sorts of projects. But what was convenient at that is during that time when they reacquired the brand, she said, "Oh, my husband is E.H. Taylor Hay." And then she went to my grandparents' farm in Frankfurt, which is what they bought when they sold the Old Taylor Distillery. And she grabbed this canister of, E.H. Taylor's 100 years old, and she gave it to Mark Brown, and he took a look at it and goes, "Oh, that's the package. Those are the bottles."
Wow.
And so that was just like the exact package from 100 years ago.
That's so cool.
And so, yeah, that, definitely the Taylor being in my middle name is Taylor. So put that in the resume. Beau Taylor.
Yeah. Seriously.
Bold, very large.
Look. Yeah. And so that was definitely a between the systems understanding, and then I think the background, and then hopefully, I think a lot of the interview process is making sure you're not an alcoholic. It's like,
that's legit.
I never thought of that.
You don't want to,
right? Yeah.
That's
at first I was nervous because in the interview, they're like, "How many of our products do you know?" And I was like, I named a couple, and they're like, "Do you drink?" I was like, what's the right answer to this?
I know. Right?
Honest answer was like, not that, it was not that much at the time. No.
Yeah.
Well, good. Like,
that would be a problem. Now you mentioned
definitely
it.
in the industry. Yeah. Like I've had to be like, conscientious of I'm not going to reach out to this customer anymore because they, don't need to be buying barrels.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, even, we've talked about this on our podcast, is like, as whiskey creators with big air quotes, you got to be careful, and it's, when you're involved so much in the industry, you got to be careful, and you don't want to ruin your involvement in the industry by developing a problem.
Yeah, I agree. It's like there is a rare art collection component to this. You can't ignore, and it's awesome. And it's hard. It's also easy to blend a problem or hide a problem in that like space of sorts. I mean, I think again, everything's balanced. Everything's balanced.
Yeah. So you were working at Buffalo Trace, and you were modernizing their single barrel program. Yes.
Yeah, just more out of necessity and almost laziness more than anything.
Nice.
So
there
you
was-
developed an online interface for people to be able to select barrels?
yeah, it was kind of a two-pronged approach. One was, I quickly noticed at the time that if there were consumers or retailers that were proactively buying barrels, they
Mhm.
had this, 2011, they had to have a lot of like perseverance and dedication and likely some computer skills to like figure out where to go, who to get to, who to call.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like even then you'd eventually get a number at the distillery, and then
Yeah.
you'd get some random person that was like, I don't know who to put you through to, and it would be a thing. And even at the distillery, pretty much 99.9% of the time would tell you need to go talk to a retailer.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh,
Yeah.
this is a manufacturing facility. This isn't a
Oh, wow.
ever. And so, like, I was lucky enough to where that was not the attitude at all. And
Mhm.
I overlooked that when I started because I was ignorant to everything. But like, I
Mhm.
thought of like, I was like, yeah, duh, great customer service. I was like, why wouldn't you? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that there was a element of just poor customer service at
Yeah.
but I mean, you get it in a sense as you grow.
So were you the guy behind the lottery system that SAS does? Were you the guy that thought that up or implemented that?
The current lottery. There was a
Mhm.
lot of things that were on the playbook to-do list that I didn't
Mhm.
get to, that were plans to do or just never got around to. So
Yeah.
I left before the lottery. My last year, I was doing the queue. I never really got to the point, and it's probably just not proactive enough of just really. There's a lot of due diligence and compliance you have to go through when you start doing that lottery, and I was not
Yeah.
ready
Oh, for
to follow
sure.
that bill. And like, a lot of my focus was on the orders in the pipeline, and
That's
it's
cool.
such a hard balance. There's so many more people that couldn't get barrels than people that,
Mhm.
and so it was like, just a dedicate. It was a touchy thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Do you enter into the Sazerac Barrel Select lotteries personally?
no, the entire time I was there, I've never bought a barrel, and I always
Mhm.
want to. And like, I definitely could have got whatever, but it was like the
Yeah.
amount
Yeah.
of people I would have to say no to, especially like retailers, just like,
Mhm.
it was just a conscious thing. But when I left, I did uh, get a barrel of Buffalo Trace with a group of buddies.
Nice.
Cool.
It was funny
Yeah,
for years. I was always telling people like, that's like, if I'm buying a barrel from Sazerac
Mhm.
for a while, Weller definitely would have been the play when it was priced
Yeah.
for a long time. But
Mhm.
Buffalo Trace, bang for your buck, or even Eagle
Oh,
Rare,
yeah.
8-year-old, hand picked single barrel for that, plus that experience for $25 a bottle.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
value packaged into that is just
Mhm.
absurd.
Yeah. For
That's
sure.
honestly
Hard to
what
beat.
through the whole. Yeah, I mean that was the mechanism that worked.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So now moving from Buffalo Trace to Hogshead now. So Hogshead, you are the chief barrel officer, co-founder at
Co-founder.
Hogshead. So, as we're moving from the Buffalo Trace conversation into Hogshead, what sorts of things were you able to take with you mentally? Like how did you bring what you were doing into, and how did you even begin to get the idea of, hey, let's do this thing on our own?
Mhm.
Yeah, so at Sazerac, the bourbon industry is very unique, and selling inventory 10 years from now, 8 years from now, forecasting your sales that far out in advance, and then also having the amount of inventory being variable, like
Mhm.
barrel to barrel, what yields, it just really complicates all sorts of things.
Mhm.
And so a little bit of overproduction can be a huge hindrance for future. And so essentially,
Yeah.
like, bourbon tried to grow and then prohibition knocked it on its butt.
Mhm.
And just between World War II, Korean War, overproduction, and then 70s once it's 80s, once it start hitting the gutter there, there's no money in bourbon.
Yeah.
And what was a baby in the 70s and then grew from the 70s and still growing massively today is software and tech.
Mm-hmm.
And so while that was growing and being implemented in most business structures, like bourbon did not have capital to throw at tech. And then all of a sudden, bourbon's getting popular in 2010. Any 8-year-old bourbon you're selling in 2010 was forecasted in 2002. Unless you're crazy, you weren't forecasting that much.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden, 2010, 2015, 2020, it's all about how do we catch up to demand.
Yeah.
Nobody knows actually what the demand is. And so all that is to say that any capital that was basically available in those early times deployed more towards expanding warehouses and building more distillation to meet future orders.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, hey, we're going to go, retool our whole aircraft carrier while we're at sea here with a new system. That's a daunting task. And what it was really crazy to think about is in 2011, when I started, there was, I'm quoting some random AI thing here, so take it. But I think it was like 50, American whiskey distilleries, but we can probably count on, 2 hands what were around at that time.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, there are 2,000 plus either distilleries, craft distilleries, or, non-distilling producers. Well, they don't have like a shared system method, inventory method to manage that. It was all tribal processes at the different distilleries. So all this is to say right now is if you went to all of those distilleries and you're Uncle Sam and you said, give us all of your barrel inventory, we need to take a look at it and we're going to put it in one database so you can look at it like Carvana. It's hell of a time making sense of all the different inventories. Even though they say the same things, they're not the same language. What one person calls a batch ID, someone else calls it a lot ID, someone else calls it a lot, calls a fill date. And so then even if you're an Excel person, which I'm not, if you're a real Excel nerd, I'm not your smart as you, but if you don't, but like when I filter on a column, I want to see I don't want to see 15 different answers for the same thing. Right. It makes every other counting formula I have confused.
Yeah, for sure.
And so all that is to say, like, when you don't have a good way of like looking at the attributes and then sorting them, it just makes it hard to make sense of. And really hard to manage when it's like, the way barrels normally come out of a warehouse, the historical process is like a harvester going through a cornfield. And now I'm a guy running in there and grabbing one of the husks and saying, don't hit this one. And 3 rows over, don't hit that one, because Cole and Bryan are tasting them. And 90 days, we'll let you know if they want them. So drive the harvester around those.
That's interesting. That's a great way to think about it, actually, because I've never. It sounds a lot more complicated, but also streamlinable, I guess, if that's a word, than I originally thought it would be.
That single barrels are, and a lot of people don't realize this, they call the distiller and like, I'm buying in bulk, why aren't you giving me a discount? It's like, you are going against the grain of every process we have.
Wow That's
so
interesting.
it's like, instead of going and buying a thing of Minute Maid lemonade at the store, asking to go to the distillery, walk through the field with them to pick a lemon, squeeze it, and things, put your name on it, and ship it to the right Walgreens. It's like that's a lot of work.
Right.
When I can normally just bottle it normal and send it to our distribution center, be done with it.
Just add it to a batch or easy single barrel. Otherwise,
speaks to what I was saying earlier with customer service being the focus. Like if you're not willing to do that for the customer, then barrel programs don't work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if you are willing to do that for the customer, then you're going to have to figure out how not to get your warehouse and bottling teams to kill you. And that's
Mhm.
my real, I think, utility that I was able to apply to Hogshead, which is the single barrel programs are similar to the bulk sales world. So, like, I can't see all the bottles behind you, but if some of those bottles, I'm sure someone doesn't have a distillery.
Yeah.
And so when they bought it, they had to go source whiskey,
Yep.
find what they liked, find it at a decent price to where they could bottle it and then deliver it to you at a fair price as the consumer.
Yeah. Mhm.
And they have not been treated fairly over the last 10 years in a lot of respect.
Yeah.
But some of that is greed by people just wanting more for barrels than a fair price.
Yeah.
And some of that is just like operational efficiencies, and you have third-party barrel owners trying to do activities via email that require people at a warehouse to move, up to hundreds of 500-pound barrels.
Yeah.
And they're the ones responsible and liable with any Uncle Sam, stuff. And so it's just, I had to learn how to basically make this single barrel one, like ownership from afar. So Cole, if you had a barrel there that hadn't been bottled, be there for 6 months, I got to make sure that doesn't go to anyone else.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I also need to attach that barrel to your bottling instructions and your distribution channels.
Totally.
Yep.
And so, but to do that, you also have to make sure it fits in the processes of the distillery in the way that they receive orders and normally do things. And so kind of learning, and that's how you scale barrel programs. Like I'd always say, it's very easy to sell barrels. Like selling barrels, delivering the barrel is way harder. Just getting it bottled, shipped to you.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of little wrenches that get thrown into the assembly line here, where it's like, nope, we're not doing the standard process with this one. We're doing something slightly different. And oh no, wait, a certain sticker needs to go on these ones. And yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah. And it is interesting because go ahead.
Sorry, Cole, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, there's no operational efficiencies with it. It's just you can find as much as you can, but at the end of the day, 1 barrel to 2 barrels is twice as much labor. Whereas if you have a stock item and I'm going from 100 cases to 200 cases, that's not. It is much easier to just go from 100 to 200 cases.
Yeah,
but
totally.
If your cases in terms of barrel orders, that's 5 barrels to 10 barrels, and that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because you think about you send Cole 3 or 4 samples of 3 different barrels, and then you got to send Bryan, as a separate entity, 3 or 4 barrels from 4 or so different barrels, because you don't want them to both select the same barrel out of the the selection that they both got. So so you got to think about that, like as you were saying earlier and stuff.
Yeah. So if you want, so when you request samples, you'll say, how long is it should take 2 weeks. All right. Well, if I get 10 orders at the same time and we have 10 barrels to sell, I need 30 samples immediately.
Yeah.
So you can oversample and only bottle the 10 that get picked.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, when bourbon becomes really tight and stock is really tight and barrels, single barrels are really tight.
Yeah.
Like you only can sample what you have. And then when you start adding age statements, and basically barrels are coming of age throughout the year. So it's like, well, yes, you can buy a barrel of Buffalo Trace, and yes, you can get samples, but your barrels don't come of age until September.
Oh, wow.
Oh, but I need them for Christmas. It's like, And so there's so many things with barrel programs that don't line up to the processes.
Yeah.
And then also, like, if you're forecasting, like if you all were to guess how many viewers you're going to have for an episode in 10 years from now, I can promise you one thing, you're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
You're either going to be too high or too low.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be right.
Certainly not on point. Yeah.
Like you can try and like you'll
Mhm.
have a good like moving GPS as you go, but end of the
Yeah.
day, like you're going to be wrong.
Mhm.
And so if you're wrong on the low side in terms of bourbon production, that means barrels are aging above what you had them forecasted for,
Mhm.
which is fine if you have a distillery of brands, varieties, taste profiles, whatnot.
Mhm.
But where it gets complicated again is, you know, these barrel programs don't really have a period of like start and stop like every other barrel. Like every other barrel, oh, was this dumped as planned, or do we need to retaste, you know, fork, whatever. It just gets complicated is the message I'm trying to
Yeah. So with go ahead. No, yeah, with Hogshead and that transition, has that, so with what we've seen of Hogshead, you're not selling Sazerac only now.
No,
I saw like Wilderness Trail, I saw Green River, I saw Bardstown Bourbon Company, saw Tennessee, what is it? Tennessee Distillery? I forget which one it is.
And so to be just kind of clear of what Hogshead is Hogshead is eBay. So we Hogshead own nothing.
It's just broker,
Yeah, it is. If you own barrels, whether you're a distillery, whether you're a brand owner, whether you're an investor, and we'll talk about the investors because there's an ecosystem where it's very useful for somebody to own the barrels as for. That covers the main segments of who would own the barrels. Yeah. Then the same buyers are those groups. You know, are you an investor, distillery, brand owner? And so the trouble with them is most of them, all of their buying and selling is segmented. And they're basically reaching out to brokers. And there's a lot of people give brokers a bad rap. Brokers basically had to like carry the load of jobs that were missing in the space. And they were the most incentivized to do it because they got paid on a transaction.
Totally.
But like if you need help sampling and you need help finding, you know, certain taste profiles of stuff, or like there's like, or you need storage at a better rate or help with the carrier. Like there's all these things brokers do. And what happened over the last 10 years is the brokers got overwhelmed with demand. And then they just were kind of able to basically filter business based on MOQs, which meant minimum order quantities.
Gotcha.
If you're a small growing plant in a forest, there's no nutrition there for you. You've got to be a big up. And that just all of that is what you saw as a consumer as, you know, $80 plus bottles of 4-year-old bourbon on the shelf that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because the brand wanted it to be that way. It was just like that is what they got tied to in a sense. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm sure there's random segments of things, probably like Beanie Babies or something that like eBay made a lot easier to go find, source, compare pricing. And so from one side on the seller end, their processes is a lot of email correspondence. And when I was at Sazerac, the key person I focused on was the Sazerac sales team because they were our primary driver. And the 3-tiered distribution channel is a whole nother beast. You know, like the way Uncle Sam set that up was you know, regulation, but it's tax levels at every level. But what that is more about is we're not allowed to control what the distributor does. The distributor can't control what the retailer does. And so, oh, back me up. I got lost, but I felt like I was on a good topic there.
I do.
You're talking about oh man, I was enjoying it. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Here, I got one for you. So to bring it home, to tie it together, earlier you were talking about antiquated categorization and standardizing of terms and things like that. And then we're bringing it to Hogshead now. But Hogshead is essentially a broker of barrels. So how have you implemented
let me
software?
simplify this now. Sorry, I see where I was going here.
Gotcha.
All of this is to say is now, if you're a non-distilling producer, if you want to start a brand or you have a brand, instead of emailing a broker, most of the broker's inventories are listed on our site.
Yeah.
So you can go to Hogshead and then you can filter by wheated bourbon, or you can do a scale of mash bills.
Nice.
And so all of those things the data has been car washed and put into like a Carvana method.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a buyer, we've given you more choice. Then you're able to look at competitive listings right next to each other and make offers, all for free, and change the order quantity and the pricing based on your offer. And you can go back and forth with the brokers. And so on the broker end, earlier I said the brokers got caught doing all this stuff that they had to do just to make a transaction.
Yeah.
We can automate a lot of the education, admin, and we did that by basically there's legal obstacles for people to buy barrels. And if you think of what PayPal did for eBay in terms of making payment and purchases and transactions much easier, for like the first year we were launched, we were building the PayPal, which is not something you'll see on the site or anything that mentions that, but it's once you place an order, there's an order tracker and an order progression.
Nice.
And it's a lot of what I learned from Sazerac in my single barrel select world. There is a distributor, a retailer, a consumer, a Sazerac sales, a bottling. You have to have, they're all siloed in their own worlds. They need to be aggregated, and all the activity needs to be aggregated and tracked right there. So really Hogshead is to make buying and selling barrels of bulk whiskey a lot easier.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'm curious how the aggregation happens. Where do you get your data? Do you get your data from a broker's inventory list, or do you go to distilleries and receive information about the barrels direct from distilleries?
Both. Mainly, there's basically the primary barrel owners right now. There are funds that simply just invest in barrels when they're zero and sell them at 4, and try to work with brands to help them grow, and then maybe look at a piece of that brand and be a part of that brand's growth in the future. There are distilleries that sell new make, and they sell those to either investors or brands. And those distillers also have aged product to sell. And then there are the non-distilling producers that bought barrels, forecasted, are wrong, as everyone is, and can sell their inventory too.
Yeah.
And so it gives them a lot more flexibility on brand building, in a sense, where you don't necessarily, in the old world, if I was going to build a 6-year-old brand, I would need to buy my 6-year-old product, but it would also behoove me to line up my 5-year, 4-year, 3-year, 2-year. And the world we're building should be much more trustworthy to say, here's the inventory here. Like, I know there's plenty, I can work off this. I know it will work fast enough. And, the distilleries like this because it meets them where their processes are. And then there's definitely I don't want to let too much toothpaste out of the tube here, because we're not ready. But my expertise is barrel to bottle.
I was going to ask you about this.
All of that and putting it into single barrels. And I just learned a lot, I think, just by my unique position at Sazerac, from dealing with every segment of the industry, from tourism to, when the tours were big collections, and that could have been a consumer, and the amount of knowledge in these retailers that have been in the business for 40 years. Vendors and distributors, and you just get a lot of information. You kind of see what the drivers are. And to me, the big thing is, if you can deliver quality whiskey at a decent price, that whiskey, the equity can be in the recipe, and that whiskey will drive value to the brands. And it's hard to do that because a lot of people have looked at, like, a lot of distilleries for some reason or the other will look at bulk as a black eye, like, oh, we don't sell that, like.
Yeah.
And I just generally think there's an opportunity for them to lean into that more, as of, like, I mean, you watch, I don't know if you do or not, but Formula or F1 on Netflix, watch a little bit of it. It's like, I forget who's the one competitor builds the engine for the other competitor. And it's like, they're proud of their engine, and the other people respect their engine. They're like, yeah, your engine is better than ours.
Right.
We're going to use it better than you can. And so, like, to me, just a lot of the earliest barrel buyers were not chasing brands and labels. They're chasing great whiskey at a value price. They used to be able to get that through, again, everything I talked through was a lens of, like, I was in a Sazerac bubble. So like, I don't mean to ignore other places. I just had blinders on. But in my world, that was a lens of, in the beginning, I'm looking for Van Winkle and BTAC. Okay. Possible to find now. I'll just go buy barrels and pick my own stuff. Okay. Those I get now. I'll go find something new. And so I do think the other part of this is those 2,000 new distilleries. I'm not saying all of them are good, but I guarantee there are some outside of Kentucky making fantastic whiskey. And giving them the same, storefront as MGP and BBC, that. And then I think when you actually start letting consumers pick barrels and you're able to show provenance because you have data transactions, which was one of my frustrations / parts of the build, was building inventory for my program in the old world. And so a lot of that, I think, will help drive, like, I don't think a lot of the big players really understand, like, the insatiable desire for, like, good barrels of whiskey from consumers and bourbon club retailers. Like, they love the single barrels. It is such an untapped demand. And right now, half of the problem is, I would say even more than that, it's distribution. Like, if there was, well, we're working on it, but just know we're working on it.
Nice.
Essentially, to where we can grease the wheels enough and scale it enough to make it to where the sellers and executors of bulk don't care if it's a single barrel or bulk. And what's useful is you might be selling 1,000 bulk barrels for $2,000, but one of those would cost $5,000. And a $5,000 bulk barrel price for a consumer, if you can add fair packaging and distribution, is a great value when I do my math. But that's what's to come. We're not there yet. Right now, if you want to buy or sell bulk whiskey.
Gotcha. So you've got samples for us here that you first off, tell me, we're trying to move barrels here. We're trying to get people to buy and sell.
Right now, I don't want you all focused on moving at all. I think this is more educational on how it works, to kind of give, like, some
100%
what the bottles on the shelves have to go through if they don't have a distillery.
Right. Yeah, totally. But now Hogshead on hogshead.com, looking through inventory, these listings say samples available. So I interpret that as you've got samples from the people who actually own these barrels. They, I don't know, send you a 750 milliliter bottle or something so that you can pour a little out and send samples to people who are interested in buying a barrel. Is all that true?
Or is that how it works?
I wish, and I think that is going to be the perfect world when everything is set up. But right now, it's more the seller, when listing his barrels, is prompted, do you have samples for this listing if requested? And it's a yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
There's a lot of compliance and legality with samples. And, in the software world, you hear like, meet the customers where they are in a sense. And it's like, well, we can't do that because not the spot you want to be shipping samples. Just meaning the way it's done now is I'm not comfortable doing at scale on a website. And when I say done now, we don't do it. That's why I'd rather the seller work directly with the buyer. So we're just like a bridge to connect them. And what the sellers don't want often is they don't want to be requested. Like they just won't do samples, which is, and it's a problem. And a lot of them will just say no samples, and that listing, you just can't.
Right.
So right now it's a bit lethargic. You would go and request those samples, and then we on our end go reach out to the seller and give them a little info about who you are, what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of help move the conversation along.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something I was definitely thinking about. How do you handle that? So that's cool.
So by some magical way, we have some samples in front of us. I assume that some decision making went into what these samples are. Mine is a 2016 MGP 95.5 Rye, so that means it's 8 to 9 years. It's about 116 proof here, and I think Cole's got a slightly different.
I got a 2015 MGP 95.5 Rye at 117.2 proof.
Are there any interesting facts or stories or anything behind these these samples?
Nothing crazy right now. So this is just generally how this would work is, let's say you were a brand. And if you're wanting to buy, it might be 10 barrels. This is an interesting thought process. If you're buying 10 barrels or 100 barrels, or maybe you're even buying 250 barrels. So if you were buying 100 barrels and you're in California and the barrels are in Kentucky and you're paying, say, $2,000 a barrel, before you paid that, what would your sampling expectations be?
My sampling expectations are always like, I don't care what the price is. I'm trying that first.
Yeah. And so if you're going to order 100 barrels, does that mean that you're tasting 100?
That's a great question.
I see your point. You know what? So obviously my mentality comes from a standpoint of a tiny whiskey club, essentially, and we may buy 1 or 2 barrels a year kind of thing. So as a high volume person, I totally get it.
Yeah. And so that's where it gets complicated, is what a lot of the people are trying to get used to is right now, there is a lot of buyers that want a small quantity of barrels. There's in the number of samples requested and the number of barrels interested in purchasing are, I guess they're not inversely correlated. They're correlated, as in the fewer barrels you want. Actually, the fewer barrels you want, the more samples you require is generally.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, it makes sense.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then where it gets complicated is there's no set standard or even an expectation of, if you go request samples and you say I'm buying 100 barrels, like I don't even know what I'm getting. So like the samples you have as a brand, those could show up and you're saying, all right, are these single barrel samples? So am I just tasting 2 random single barrels and I'm buying 500 and I hope I got 2 good samples?
Yeah.
Are those composite samples, as in did they drill multiple barrels and then put that sample in? And so you want more selectivity and more understanding of what you're sampling. But then when you have to zoom out and look at what that activity looks like at the distillery, if you're an investor, basically anybody that owns barrels that's not a distillery, their barrels are at a distillery. That's part, like, you can't have barrels in your garage. And so if I own barrels and they're at a distillery in Kentucky and I need 100 samples, it's basically going to be about $25 per sample minimum.
Wow.
To get them. And it'll be several weeks. And so then I get them to you. And then if you that it's just a very expensive activity if you strike out.
Yeah, totally. If they end up saying, no, we don't want any barrel, never mind.
Oh, for sure.
And so, but the problem on the other side is if you're a discerning brand owner and you want to put good liquid into the bottle, then you're going to want samples and you're going to want to do smaller orders. So essentially it's a hodgepodge of how samples show. I purposely didn't tell you guys what was in that other one.
Should we?
Is it the same
listings that have sold? So
okay.
Is with the blue other label one? Is that the same? We each got the same one.
Yeah, you all got the same one on that.
Okay. Now, should we do this? Because Cole and I have a sideshow that we do that's a shorter form thing, where we try to guess the age and the proof and what the distillery and everything. Is that something that we should do with this?
But it could be tricky because I think something to keep in mind sometimes when you are. Well, this could give it away.
Don't give it away. Don't.
Yeah. We love doing this.
We'll sip it. We'll sip it right now. Enjoy.
I'll go ahead.
Just so you know, no judgment though, because I don't think you're set up for success with this.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
So you're telling me it's Canadian? No, I'm kidding.
Comment like that. A comment like that implies that you think that we actually do this well. We do not.
Yeah. Props. There's very few people I came across because I used to have a blanket statement that nobody knew what they're doing, but there's a couple dudes I came across. I was like, oh damn, that dude's dialed in right now.
That's cool.
Great.
Nice.
Sometimes we're on point. We do like a sideshow we call the Reentry Buzz, where we do blind tasting competitions. We have a pool of about 200 whiskeys, and we try to guess, what it is, what's the proof of it, all these different things. And sometimes we nail it. Like every now and then we'll just nail everything about it. But
you know what? Sometimes we're super aligned. Like independently, we came to our own conclusions that were identical. We both guessed that it's the exact same bottle, and we're both way off.
I'm getting. You know what? I'll hold off until Bryan says anything. But
give me some time. Give me some time. But
I'm getting a distinct note.
Let's talk.
That reminds me of a distinct distillery.
That's not what I want to hear because I got nothing yet. So $300,000 plus inventory that's cataloged here on hogshead.com. What is the wildest barrel you've come across so far? Like price or provenance? Like what is something that comes to mind?
Definitely the 16-year-old Buffalo Trace wild turkey stuff. Just because.
The buff turkey.
Buff
16
turkey.
years.
I didn't the oldest Buffalo Trace barrels I've ever sold. I didn't sell until I left Buffalo Trace.
Oh wow, that's funny. Yeah, it makes sense they wouldn't do too old while at the Sazerac program, but that the funniest thing I'll talk about this for a second. So I was on Hogshead website, hogshead.com for those who are interested in checking it out. I was looking at the breakdown, and there's one that says Buffalo Trace on it. And then it says the mash bill on it. And I'm like, Bryan, did we just figure it out? And and before I went any further, I realized that it was specifically distilled in 2008 or whatever for wild turkey, which is what we sometimes refer to in the field as buff turkey juice. But I was like, did we just figure out either mash bill number 1 or mash bill number 2? But in this case, we didn't. And that's the interesting thing.
I have a general opinion on mash bills too, though.
Yeah.
This is kind of a hot take. So like if you were to make like a weighted map of the flavor profile of one barrel of bourbon. So you just take one barrel and you say, all right, let's do a pie chart of what impacted the flavor of this one barrel. And let's give them percentages.
Yeah.
So there's no set number here, but you can go from 50% to 70% for the barrel itself.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Like just a new charred oak barrel has a big impact on that. That is a huge thing with bourbon. So if that's somewhere 50 to 70, then let's just rewind to the top of the supply chain. You got tree. So oak tree, where is the oak tree planted? Like what country?
Yeah.
And then, geography wise, is it on like this side of the mountain, that side of the mountain?
Yep.
Is it a natural growth forest or is it just a bunch of oak trees? How
is
fast?
It the top of the tree?
Top of the tree, bottom of the tree. all of that impacts it. And then when you get down to the cooperage level, they're just mixing up those staves for the most part. Like you have no idea
that's
what.
a good point.
It's like that is a crapshoot. So at the very beginning, 50% of our flavor is basically luck of what whiskey hits what barrel.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, so now let's go from barrel to, let's say, grains. So like, okay, what grains did you use? White corn, sweet corn, this corn, that corn.
Yeah.
You know, what type of rye did you use? What type of malted barley did you use? How did you cook your grains? What type of yeast did you use? You know, how long did you ferment? What did you distill at? What did it come off the distill at? What did you enter in the barrel at? You know, like all of these little things, and we're not even to like aging in a warehouse yet.
Yeah.
So then when someone comes to me and they say there's a big difference between 21% and 19% rye in this mash bill, I'm like,
yeah,
you know. Like, and then if you can go to like, all right, what's your favorite spot in the warehouse? I'm like, I mean, well, I was at Buffalo Trace long enough to get one data point for a 10-year barrel. Like, I mean, I think it was because this was the right spot, but maybe it was because the weather pattern for the last 10 years or like,
right. 10 years is a lot of time. Yeah.
There's a lot. And so there's so many little things. And like one of my favorite interactions I had was there's a DARPA whiskey club, which is Defense Advanced Research Projects.
I got you.
They're like our brainiac arm of the government.
Nice.
Yeah. They make lasers to shoot down missiles and
right.
And like all of them like also worked at Google and all this other stuff.
Very cool.
They were absolutely just blown away and fascinated by the whole thing. It was like if we all decided that this barrel of whiskey in front of us was the best barrel ever made, 100 out of 100, make it again, no chance.
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
And anywho, that's where I get lost in a lot of like, I like exactly what you all are doing, which is taste it blind, figure out if you like it, and then go into the details. But I hate letting details decide what's what. And a lot of them are just arbitrary.
Yeah. You mean, okay, so what you're saying is hogshead.com does not have a filter on being able to target 17 to 19% rye?
We actually do. We do.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like you got a slider kind of thing. Yeah.
What I would recommend is don't overthink it.
Yeah.
I like that you provide the capability, but I understand the lack of need for a totally rational, normal person to do that.
Yeah. To me, like I would think of it as like rye mash bourbon, wheated bourbon, 4 grain. Like, I mean, there's definitely a difference if you start getting drastic, like high rye, low rye, like, you know, but when you're talking just like minor percentages in mash bills, I don't think it's
Yeah. It's not really gonna matter too much.
As far as people come to the website who are looking to purchase barrels, do you feel like a majority of your customers, you'd call them a customer, right? Majority of your customers tend to be the nerdier club types that are looking for low volume because they're the ones who are going to seek out a website like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, again, this was in my old world too. There's some sort of crossover between bourbon and people that like to look things up on their computer. I do think it actually, this, like, you know, early on Silicon Valley, like they were early to bourbon.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was just like bourbon is the most like authentic, like real thing. And when you live in a world of like screens and whatever that, like, oh, something real and authentic. And like, you know, I think like, but like a lot of it, like straightbourbon.com, that was a big message board early on. That was like, that's where, you know, there's just all sorts of like keyboard warriors of sorts that would, like, and it leads to this desire for information about whiskey like you don't see with other products, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, tangent there.
So now, well,
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
so what I was getting to was, say Cole and I, as a small whiskey club kind of thing, if we wanted to go through the process of using Hogshead to purchase a barrel, we would use your capability to target our barrel of interest, and then we get hooked up with the owner of that barrel to figure out how we're going to handle the bottling and distribution after that. How would all that play out?
Yeah, so there's kind of today's world and then also future world.
Nice.
So today's world is you would log into there and you would go look for barrels you wanted to buy. And if there were barrels you wanted to buy, you could essentially go ahead and buy them. And then we have the, essentially set up on the back end to where you don't have to go through all of the steps of setting up a storage contract with a bonded facility. And so if you just wanted to buy them and own them and sit on them, without intention of bottling today, you could do that. Now, what we're building, and there's where it says barrel to bottle coming soon, is soon what we would want is just like we automated the bonded storage piece for you all when you went to buy, we want to also basically remove how the sausage is made from having a private label bottled and delivered to you, or bottled and picked up at a distillery. And there's a lot of compliance hoops and partners that we'll have to work with to build that out. But it's essentially like, you've probably seen clubs do this. A lot of my earliest barrel buyers are now have their own brands, and they go and buy bulk and then have it bottled and then consume it on their own. So the steps they go through, we can basically just automate that for a lot of people.
Cool.
And then, I think there's some people, there's different types of barrel buyers, I guess is where I was headed with that. Some people are more interested on what's on the outer label and are into, once they got a barrel, designing it in the outer label. But some people are more interested in like the actual, whiskey itself. And so having a vehicle for the different types of people is kind of what, when I say a vehicle, I mean a vehicle to get the liquid out of the barrel into the bottles into your hand.
Yeah. Well, this plays into your barrel to bottle experience too.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if I confused that. So in the standard world of bulk buying and selling, the barrels tend to not go anywhere. It's usually just change of ownership is happening.
Interesting. Yeah.
There are some purchases where you might buy here and then move there for bottling. So but it really just kind of depends on why you're buying, who you are. Again, you might be an investor group that is going to buy 1,000 barrels of new make from Bardstown bourbon, sit on them for 4 years, so a brand doesn't have to have those costs.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
All right, Cole, what you think about this pour?
Okay. Do you want me to go through some of my guesses?
I do, yeah.
All right. Hold off, Beau, because we don't want to hear it until both of us have guessed. I think with 75% confidence, this is Jim Beam. I think it is likely a bourbon with 75% confidence. We don't always do confidence level, but I think there's a chance this could be a rye because this reminds me of a Nulu pick that I have. It is very grassy on the palate. It is very nutty and slightly nutty on the nose, or nutty on the nose, but a little bit nutty on the palate, but more grassy on the palate, which reminds me of a Nulu rye that I have, which is an MGP Rye. So I'm thinking, it's probably some crazy Jim Beam bourbon, but it's likely. I mean, it's not likely. It is possible. It's a MGP Rye. But I'm gonna put my money on the Jim Beam because of that nuttiness.
Here. Yeah.
What's that?
Hedging a little bit. You can't guess multiple
yeah.
things, Cole. That's not how this
So
works.
I guess if I have to guess, I'm gonna say Jim Beam bourbon. Let me guess the proof real quick.
Yeah. And I lined up all my
age
stuff
because I can't verify proof on that.
Okay, cool. Age is
Okay.
age is 8, I would say.
Ooh, okay. So I was nosing it at first, and I was trying to figure out where to go, and I was getting kind of dusty, funky on the nose. Definitely nothing jumping out at me, and nothing clearly like, oh, it's this kind of fruit or whatever. It was funky a little bit. But then I sipped it, and the palate just screamed Beam for me. And it screams a little more vanilla than a normal Beam. But I totally get what is in my mind as normal Jim Beam peanuts, but a little vanilla.
Bardstown peanuts. I think Bardstown is peanuts.
Oh, really?
I say that about Barton. Barton is all peanuts to me. That's what
really.
I'm very poor at communicating what I do take, but I'm like Bardstown peanuts. That's about
I gotta get more Bardstown or opportunities, but
I know
not. So
I don't
far
have much,
from what I've seen, especially compared to Jim Beam for me. But
I don't have much experience with Bardstown or 1792. I will say the 1792 that I've had, I haven't liked very much, and I do like this though. So my guess was Beam, 11 year, and I was sitting around 120 proof, even though we can't verify that.
You ready for the answers?
Mm-hmm.
It is 10-year Beam. I'm very.
Well, I guess Bryan wins because he said 11 and I said 8.
Yeah.
So the reason I was saying that it could be a curveball, and I don't know this, but it's again, so some distilleries will sell off profile stuff, as in it's not that it's bad or good, it's just not our profile. We don't use this for our stuff. And if there's anything I learned selling barrels is, one, there's no experts because it's whatever you like. If you like it, it doesn't matter.
What works.
Yeah. And that it's one man's junk is another man's journey. So when people are like, oh, it's been picked through, I'm like, it doesn't matter if someone else tastes it. I watched, there's a group called 1789B who I just kind of put it the top of the chain in terms of serious barrel buyers. They were there before I started, and barrels of Weller they picked. I saw some of the bottles going at Christie's auction a couple years ago for $40-50 grand.
For a bottle or barrel?
Bottle of Weller that they picked.
Woo! That's great.
They had a lot of the early Willet picks. They're just they moved the needle on things. Oh yeah, and I remember so they would legit get in a single file line at these tastings. They wouldn't taste. There'd be 40 of them. They would talk. They'd go through. They were very regimented. And then they'd all come back and they, as a group, decide what they wanted. And I remember one of them came to me and he was like, I love this one. And at the same time, people would go out of their way to come to me and be like, this is the worst barrel I've ever had. Why do y'all roll this out? And at the end of it, he bought that one barrel for himself. The rest of the group split their couple barrels and he just bought that one barrel because he was obsessed with it. And it was I was like, you really just, it is one, all bets are off. You just got to find the barrel that speaks to you. You can't really why it does. They all taste different.
Yeah. I love that.
Man, that's
cool. Because there's some things I just absolutely love that Max, one of our biggest listeners, just hates. And I'm going to buy what I want.
I know, right?
Shout out to our listener, Max.
Yeah, I would. It usually seemed that I could put people in two categories, and this is way oversimplification.
Bring it on! I'm excited for this.
In terms of barrel picking, people would either pick the one that I would give the chocolate milk mouth feel, so creamy, thick, a lot of viscous, sweet nose, easy to drink. And then the other people, actually, there's a third too, but the vast majority of these two, the other people were just dry, oaky kick in the mouth. It has to have so much character and bite. And they're usually cigar smokers. Or
I think Max is a cigar smoker.
And it's
and then what's the third?
Then the third is actually the funky barrel buyers. They just funky beard. There's one guy, Larry Rice.
I think that's Bryan.
Silver Dollar. Comes to mind. He just looks for funk and he picks some bang.
No, I'm
Dude,
I'm a sweet man. I'm a sweet and fruity kind of guy, and that'll sell me on anything.
I'm the impressed by off-profile buyer. I'm the
He is.
you're
I
telling
can
me
assure you of
this
that.
is Beam? I'm that's me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the like my favorite pour of all time is E.H. Taylor Seasoned Wood, and it's just beautifully fruity, but also like really full bodied at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's one of my favorites. And I think my actual favorite, and I don't know how much of this is just like the build up in your head, set and setting, but I do think it's something different. I had a customer give me a bottle of Weller from Stitzel Weller. I think it was distilled in 1945 and then bottled 52 or something. Like, again, I have a heavy conscience, and so like if I was smart and savvy, I'd have just a tremendous amount of wealth in a locker in my basement, form of whiskey bottles. I did not do that, but so like the things that I did have, I would open, and like I would never really try to gobble our stuff up. But so this one I opened, and I mean it was unbelievable. I can't ever drink the last of it because it's unreal.
That's cool.
But
Bondia, we call
it goes back to the like there's this old library book note to it that is funky.
Oh, nice.
But there's something about it.
Musty.
Yeah, but there's something else to it that I don't know. Like you like to think when you're working at a distillery that you got better at making whiskey over the years, like that. Yeah. Like a lot of people are like, oh, that 1950 stuff is so much better. Like there's a guy in the Packers that would super fan, and we would go back and forth a bit. So he's like, yeah, I think 1952 Packers kick your all's ass too. Like,
that's great.
Generally, like Harlan's like, no, I think my whiskey is better than this old stuff. And I was like, but I do think there's something to the trees that we were using back in the day.
That makes sense.
Like I think the trees were just healthier and had more to provide to the process. There's such a big.
Are there any other like family heirloomy kind of interesting pours you've been able to have in your life?
That's a great question.
It's a shame that there wasn't somebody that was more like I was more into like the relationships, the history, like just like the world of it, not as much as like driven by taste and other like there's like my cousin who's also a tailor, my grandfather, his grandmother both have that house in Frankfurt, and he's actually at Castle and Key now or back.
Nice. Oh, cool.
Cool.
You know, it's like
true Taylor distillery.
Yeah, he's the brain that if you're an eclectic bartender and you want to geek out on weird brands and taste profiles, like talk to Murray. Murray's your guy.
Nice.
I can't. Cool. I don't speak that language. I've never been good at it. I don't forget why I even went on this tangent right there. Told you I was going to do that.
Don't matter.
Interesting family pours. More about the history.
Say is that I bet if there was a live cam on me throughout all of my market visits and bartender, like when I go into some of these places, like or if you're familiar with Rare Character, the guy behind that name Pablo, and he was a great customer back in the day, and you know this was always like one of my more memorable moments. Is I was in his restaurant in LA, and he had like this hidden room in the back that you could only get in there if you called a dial-up phone. And when you got there, it was only 1950s decor and 1950s whiskey on the back bar.
Nice.
He was, geeking out on all these things that, again, if there was somebody like with your all's breadth of knowledge on brands and packaging and what bottles are what, like you all be like, holy shit,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just more focused on like, I don't see any Sazerac product up there. But I'll never forget. This was like, 11 o'clock at night or something in there. And I'm in the Sazerac rep, and he gets a call on his cell phone. He's like, oh, got to hop on a plane, go to Portugal and buy some random bottle. And I was like, man, you're
just one bottle.
Yeah. I mean, Pablo is he's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool though. Yeah.
So that was always a memorable night, but definitely that bottle of Weller always topped it off just because.
Like, that's cool.
Are there any on the sourcing side or on the buying side, are there any particular customers or other than Pablo, customers or distilleries that stick out in your mind as like being really fun to work with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think what's interesting is that there are distilleries that are new and their product is aging up and they're going to be making good product. And because
do you care to name drop anyone here?
well, just on what I can only name drop what I've tasted is Jackson Purchase, and I think that's got a lot of legs. Just there's some old that I think is good. And
Nice.
you know,
my audio might have dropped out a little bit there. Could you say that one more time?
Jackson Purchase Distillery.
Cool.
So, and then, you know, they've got some 3-year-old distillate or 3-year-old barrels that, you know, I used to call it distillate, still young, but you can tell when things are on the right trajectory. It's got that like,
nice,
you know, it's the certain nose that you're looking like, ooh, this will probably taste good. I mean,
that's cool.
Not that they always taste good when you do that, but, and then there's another distillery that I think they're not open yet, but like if I would have, like they're doing everything the way that I think it should be done in terms of like it's called Eastern Light Distilling, and they're Eastern Light Distilling. They're coming out of Moorhead, Kentucky.
Okay.
They're opening their doors in I think 2027 for new.
Keeping them in mind.
Yeah, but in terms of anybody that is starting a brand or needs help with their brand, like they're definitely a great resource. They're kind of like they'd be a home place of sorts.
That's cool.
Yeah. Their master distiller, his name's Caleb. He's from where is it? Yeah, I know this. I'm gonna blow it. Maybe it was Michter's, or maybe it was Peerless. I forget. He's great though.
That's cool.
Yeah. So anyway, and then there's a lot of different sellers out there and brokers that I really like working with that, again, we're not trying to replace brokers. It's just a platform of brokers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Another one that I was thinking about recently, there was some news went out recently about Westward or Westland. Don't quote me, but somebody filed for bankruptcy recently. Are instances like this where smaller distilleries who overstepped a little bit because what they call the bourbon boom is maybe not so boomy anymore, are barrel availability instances like this an opportunity for Hogshead?
Yeah.
Big nod. Okay.
All right, there's a lot to come through. A lot of ADD hit me at the same time.
Nice. Bring it on.
Lay it on me. Yeah.
Sazerac 2022. My first job was a consulting job with a distillery, and and they were a new distillery. And I very much had blinders on at Sazerac, especially Sazerac barrel program. Like that was my, and it was so much labor and work that when I wasn't doing that, I had my head on a pillow basically. And, so when I left Sazerac and I kind of like opened my eyes up to the rest of the world and like what had developed, it's essentially, there was a 1849 style gold rush on bourbon in like 2015.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was filled with speculators. And the speculators first were able to buy new make barrels for like, $500 or something like that. Yeah. And then sell them at 4 years old for like probably at the craziest $5,000.
Dang.
And so they're like, oh, let's do that again. So now it's like 2018 and they're all and buying more barrels. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, we could just build our own storage warehouses so we don't have to pay for storage.
Yeah.
So now we've got our own basically property here. And then, wow, with the amount of barrels we're buying and selling, we could probably just build a distillery and sell new make barrels to these investors too. And again, so it's like a thing built by spec. I'm not quoting any one thing right here. This is just a general gist. Is a lot of things were basically like built by speculators for speculators, and as soon as the money, like there was a hint of you're not going to crush these returns then.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's a reason, like Jack Daniels is kind of the model in terms of you have to be around and grow slow for a long time in bourbon.
Wow,
like,
yeah, that's a good point.
It's just really hard to, the capital outlay for, laying down sales growth is absurd and risky.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of bourbon, if you have barrels aging, the volume, the quantity of liquid in your barrel is going down, while the tax base of your barrel is going up. So the cost of goods is going up while the quantity of goods is going down.
Yeah.
So it's not just like I have too much. It's like, I have too much. It's getting more expensive and becoming less somehow all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it's just a very, it's easy. It's almost like a Ponzi scheme. Like no matter what, you have to keep more people coming in otherwise. And so it's, easy to overproduce because the demand is absurd.
Yeah.
But like you do have to have a solid foundation of exit ramps, aka brands and consumers that are drinking your brand.
Yeah. For people who have overproduced or brands that have, overstepped in some way, have you come across any situation where you say, no, I don't want their stuff on my site? Or has it reached that level yet of Hogshead denying any sort of stuff in their portfolio at all?
We would never deny based on that. I would deny based on bad actors / customer service.
Gotcha.
Like you sell barrels and then you're not willing to do the paperwork and, that kind of crap. Like that's And so we're going to try to bring to the marketplace your general, seller ratings, buyer ratings, and review each other. And then also, we want to highlight the producers, give them pages.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
I was just going to say because there are entities that don't need high quality whiskey at all. Like, it's getting ready to drink package that all the flavor is getting drowned out. They need alcohol and they need, whatever.
Right.
And so there's just basically right now, all of the bulk is being bought and sold as unopened baseball cards.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it just goes back to how I mentioned the problems with inventory management in terms of data and how they structure it. It's hard for anybody to open the baseball cards and look at the attributes and decide who's Ken Griffey. And
I see that on a small scale when I see, people in like secondary market stuff. People are just gobbling up bottles that are from a certain distillery, or they have a certain statistic about them. And like, you don't see anyone opening and reviewing these bottles. You just see people buying them because of what the name and everything is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so like, basically I think the formula that happens there is if you focus on the beginning of getting good whiskey, there are people like Pablo was one of them. All Pablo wanted was good whiskey.
Yep.
And so like the narrative is now Pablo picks good whiskey. So if Pablo puts his name on it, it's fantastic. And
exactly.
Then all of a sudden people are like, what's that? That's rare character. Well, now they know rare character by label, not by Pablo. They don't know Pablo started with good whiskey.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, you just can't really get too much away from like what built all of this was good whiskey at a value. It's not that complicated.
Yeah. Speaking of picking good whiskey, have you ever come across any barrels that you personally have been like, yeah, I'm going to keep this one, or anything like
that? At Silver Dollar, I don't know if it's there anymore, but they had on their menu, they have Eagle Rare picks, and one is selection number 2. It might still be there because the way they price it is based on how many bottles they have left of it.
Nice.
But this goes back to like, I think they picked it in like 2015 or something. But that was
so those bottles are pricey now.
It was just like, it's a pour, so they might still have it. It's at the restaurant there. But honestly, my favorite barrel pick ever in all my years there was actually a barrel of tequila from Casa San Mateus.
Oh, wow.
And it was 4-year aged in French oak.
Wow.
And it was a Casa Reserva. I'll show you the picture, black bottle. I'm too dyslexic to remember.
Yeah, you're good.
Casa Reserva. It's a black bottle, and we didn't do many barrels of it. And it was also at a time where a lot gets lost in translation when you're talking to operations Spanish. I would go down to Mexico, I'd be in a table, and there's me and 8 Mexicans, and we're all talking, and I would say something in English, and they would talk for about 15 minutes in Spanish. And realize how dumb you are. And you're like, oh man, if they were in America, they'd be following along with this conversation just fine. And they'll look at you and say, all right, we're good. And I'm like, we're good, because that was really complicated. Are you sure you're all good? I have no idea what you all just talked about. So long story short, there were I think some assumptions looked over early on with that barrel program, that the customers were getting first used barrels and then you dump them out and they get them. And so doing that with French oak is not very easy or cheap. Just I don't know how many of those are in French oak anymore. But it's definitely the best barrel I ever had was tequila.
That's cool.
Awesome. That's cool. Are there any distilleries or I guess just distilleries that you hope to bring into the Hogshead website family? Are there any distilleries that you're like, man, I really hope we get
currently have
help sell their stuff or anything like that?
It's funny, in this, just I rely on my relationships with folks like you all, where I'm like, hey, you do a good distillery. Like that's what I need. I need the people to tell me where the good stuff is, because a lot of them, there's I talked to my buddy, his name is Reed Betchell, RIP. He was at 1789B, and he was very early on to barrel buying, and he was also gave me a lot of information along the way.
Nice.
But the gist of it is, there's distillery XYZ in any random state that's making great whiskey, and there are barrel clubs all over that want it, and the only thing missing is just a pipeline and access. And so the point being is, we're looking to get more distilleries that I've never heard of that are making good whiskey on the site. We've got plenty of Green River and MGP and Bardstown Bourbon and Beam, and
because they've got plenty of whiskey. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily their fault. It was, again, there was just speculators, and it's not that the brand. When I say those brands, they aren't the ones selling it. The vast majority of cases, it's they have sold it. And again, the proper ecosystem is distillery sells it to an investor that's got a lot of capital, and where a modest gain over 4 years is a great store value for them. And so whether that's they buy a barrel at $750 and sell it 4 years later for $1,500 to $2,200.
Well, yeah.
And that is really useful for a brand not have to sit on 4 years of inventory if they're bottling a year-old product. And so we want to make sure that ecosystem stays intact. We don't want to disrupt that. And so again, a lot of the investors on our site are a lot of the sellers are people that have bought those barrels, but now a lot of that inventory is aging up, getting cheaper. Great time for brands, kind of like it was in the 90s, where you could go get old whiskey and cheaper packages.
Yeah. Bryan and I are probably thinking something similar as you were talking about it, is that at least on my mind while you were talking about that was Wilderness Trail. That's a good brand to have.
I do like Wilderness Trail a lot.
Yeah, we love it.
They especially I like their older wheat stuff.
Oh yeah.
And there were people that had it and had been selling barrels, and I was like, I would sit on that. I just have never the normal cycle when I got in here, people want to buy at 0 and sell at 4, and I'm like, that's not, to me, it's buy at 4 and sell at 12.
For sure.
Have you gotten to try the 8-year weeded Wilderness Trail?
No, I think the oldest I've tried is 6 year.
Still good.
Delicious.
Cool. Well, this may happen at some point in the future. We'll figure something out.
Well, I
Lovely.
mean, on hogshead.com, I think I want to say it was an 8-year that I saw
Yeah,
of the
it
weeded.
likely could be, but like,
Yeah.
so if I wanted to get samples, I'd have to go and ask that guy and then pay for them.
Just do it.
Yeah. Well, if you need somebody
were
to go
startup.
in, if you need somebody to
Yeah.
help lower the cost of the work of getting
Yeah.
samples, we're in.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Well, I
Wilderness
do
Trail
think something
8-year
that I've
weeded bourbon barrel.
like,
That'd be crazy.
I think something that would be very needed is a third party barrel grader.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, see,
It could be that.
wow, that's what we need. Because us at Hogshead, because we want to be objective, so we can't just break our own.
We both
We
guessed
will
Jim
take
Beam,
on that
man. Come on.
responsibility.
I like it.
Yeah,
we will
we
just
both guessed
taste
Jim
whiskey
Beam.
and tell you how good it is.
All right, do some, because I want people, as much as I don't love tasting notes, I do want people to be able to come in and search by tasting notes.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
we can give tasting notes.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for
Peanutty,
essence of boot
grassy.
skull, yes.
But there are like some of the brands, maybe behind Bryan, I can pretty much spot a lot of them behind you, Cole. But for the brands behind you, Bryan, that if they do come, from not the normal distillery, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see. No, never mind. Okay, then
that's okay.
Yeah. Well, Beau, we'll kind of close it out pretty soon. But one last question I at least wanted to ask you is, you've been in the industry for a while. What is your daily drinker? Whether you drink it daily or not, what is your go-to pour now that you've experienced so much whiskey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm spoiled, but I'm getting spoiled quickly because basically the only things that I kept in my cabinet were gifts from customers where it'd be like, hey man, like I picked a barrel, wanted you to have a bottle, like that type of stuff. Cool. It was like, that didn't happen very often at all. And so like, but I was there for 10 years and there's thousands of barrels. And so like, I can pretty much just reach in and grab stuff. And so, but now I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, can't grab that one. Can't grab that one. Like I've got, so really my daily is I mentioned I picked a barrel of Buffalo Trace.
Nice.
That was my go-to.
Is that your daily because you have like 30 bottles left to go through?
Yes. Like if, honestly, I just think of different customers' picks they shared with me. Like 1789B, I had a couple of Weller picks from there that I've run through, unfortunately. Awesome. I've got a couple of Husk Wellers that I don't want to open.
I'm not sure I know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. So early in like 2012, 11, 14, 15, before Foolproof.
Okay.
In the barrel program, there was always requests for non-chill filtered. I guess.
Yeah, that's not the name of the podcast.
Not the name of the podcast, but objectively the better whiskey.
Yeah.
And so we had Weller, which is 90 proof, and then Weller 107, which is 107. And so when I would go to the lab and I'd say, hey, can we do non-chill filtration on this barrel pick?
Nice.
For the vast majority of picks, they'd be like, well, if it's less than 100 proof, then the oils and fatty acids will coagulate. And if it gets cold, you'll have flocking on the shelf, and then we'll get complaints, which we would. I would get complaints from random customers.
Like, there's boogers in my whiskey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but somewhere above 100 proof, it doesn't do that.
Nice.
And I would always get these requests from it. And then there's a chef, his name was Sean Brock, and he had a place called Husk in Charleston, another place in Nashville. And he was, big chef, and like, chefs are tastemakers. They grow brand. I was working with him on a pick, and he was just wearing me out about getting it done non-chill filtered. And I was like, dude, we can't do it. We've never done it. We just won't do it. And I remember I was watching Kentucky play, and I was at their Final Four or national championship game.
Nice.
And then he sends me a text of a bottle from like the 90s or early 2000s that was a Weller pick that some store did on a sticker really big. It said unchill filtered. And I was like, dude, I swear I've never seen of this, heard of this. Like, all right, I guess like we can do one barrel for you, non-chill filtered. You cannot tell anybody.
Nice.
Your back bar, you cannot tell anybody. Within a month, I'm getting emails. I heard we can do non-chill filter pick. Then
Brian has one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then
I have a non-chill filtered 107 at least. Yeah.
That's what. So I opened up the doors to where for a while it was only bars could do it, because bars we didn't have to worry about flocking, or consumers could do it if they were able to get a barrel because it wouldn't sit on the retail shelf. And then my buddy Gene Charnas, who's awesome if you're ever looking for whiskey in Chicago, warehouse liquor. He's the man. He was like, great customer, knows what he's doing. You know, he lit a fire under my ass about not being able to do it, you know, because Gene's motto is I want more whiskey in my whiskey, like AKA don't don't touch
No, you're good. We're technically explicit. Yeah.
Okay. You know, and so, you know, and then it got into where like, all right, now every barrel order that's coming in, we've got to figure out if the customer wants a chill filtered or non-chill filter. We got to figure out a way to make sure the processor knows that. And it's like, so eventually, you know, that turned into Weller Foolproof is essentially the foolproof. You don't have to filter it. And then the part of the foolproof is well, never mind.
I'm not able to say.
Give you some weird operational admin nuance that doesn't make any difference.
That's cool though. But you got some good options at home. Any last questions for you, Brian?
Yeah, I do. I have one question that's completely ridiculous. Hope you're ready. Hogshead. There are many different barrel types. Did you ever consider calling your company Butt?
Or Butt Ton, for the record.
I love these ideas, but Butt was not up there, but I think it should be.
Dang it. Yeah. Okay. All right. That'll be the spinoff company.
Like, you know, Hogshead actually came. It was like we had a text thread and we didn't have a name, and the guy was just like, all right, Hogshead. And we're like, all right, it can be Hogshead for now. And I was technically the only like whiskey person on there. I was like, look, I worked at Sazerac Buffalo Trace for
never touched
less than 12 years. Never once did we say the word Hogshead. Like, you know, that is just not a bourbon industry term.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's very easy for everybody to remember. And then globally, it kind of has some whiskey affiliations, and the URL was available.
It was available? That was my next question. You didn't have to pay for that? Like,
and it was actually the person that owned it. I might jack this up, but he bought it when it was like Flash, you know, Flash
back in the day.
The beer delivery company.
Oh wow!
Or it was either beer or rum, one of the two. But yeah, we had to do some negotiating. We had to write him a check into
Understandable.
Yeah.
And speaking of rum, since you mentioned that, is there any plans at all to go for tequila, rum, scotch, anything like this on hogshead.com?
Yeah, absolutely. All of it. It's basically one at a time, and also more driven by, like, you know, I mentioned earlier, we're a startup, so we kind of have to be strategic in what we roll out when. Rum is something that I've been eager to be selling for years. There's you know, it's kind of hard to find I call it like a lot of rum is like hot dogs. Like you just don't know what's in it. Came from.
I was so excited to see where you were going with that. It was like like rum is like hot dogs. It's always delicious. I didn't know.
But there are some great steak rums, as in it's like this is a barrel of rum. It came from this place. It was made like this, and we know it's 16, 17, whatever, and they're just absolutely phenomenal.
Cool.
But yeah, I want to sell barrel aged spirits and basically bridge the gap to make it to where order quantity is not an issue, whether you're a one barrel buyer or a bulk buyer, it doesn't matter. I think there's more active creators than passive consumers now. Kind of that ecosystem of letting the active creators in whiskey go pick barrels, build brands, will naturally, I think it'll essentially be similar to wine vintages. Like we talked about, that 2018 Wilderness Trail wheat,
Yeah.
and imagine if anybody has barrels of that in 6 years. It's
Yeah.
like the more of these single barrel picks whatever, it's not a single barrel, but a custom bottling, if you will, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
niche.
totally.
Those drive kind of value and equity.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, two things that I hope. First of all, I hope that Hogshead continues to do really, really well, and we're grateful to have you on. But secondly, I hope that I could buy the domain for buttton.com.
Yeah,
because
right.
obviously that probably wasn't taken yet. TUN for the record, everyone. Yeah.
So I just checked buttton.com and
is it explicit?
Dude, I'll no, sky's the limit for me. I'll take anything. The website does not exist. I feel like that means no. I feel like that means the domain's taken, but somebody just hasn't done anything, because otherwise it would have gone to like a holding site or whatever. Anyway,
we'll find out.
Hopefully it's not a Hogshead competitor that already had this.
Yeah. No, we're just gonna do whiskey stuff.
You know what? No, maybe Hogshead does own buttton.com.
Yeah. Oh, you should do that, and it just redirects to hogshead.com.
Dude,
you're welcome.
But buttton.com could be the Scotch side of hogshead.com.
That's true. Yeah, there are more butts in the Scotch world and more tons in the Scotch world.
For sure.
Technically, I gave my hope when I said hopefully we don't have a competitor.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, easy.
Well, I hope I didn't ramble too much. That would be my
no. You're totally great, and I hope that someday maybe the Chill Filtered community is able to purchase a barrel through hogshead.com.
Yeah,
Wilderness Trail. You all want to maybe document it or something along the way, kind of show the world how it's done.
That'd be cool.
Yo, that's a great idea, and I hope we do that.
Let's keep the combo going.
Yeah, and we will. But most of all, listeners, I hope that our love of whiskey lifted your spirits.
I love these ideas, but was not up there, but I think it should be.
Dang it. Yeah, okay, all right.